You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where on this show we'll be talking about what we learned from the 5-match T20 series between India and England. We'll also be picking our combined 11 from those two sides and bringing you a short preview of the highly anticipated 3-match ODI series between the two teams. I'm Jack Hope, and after a few podcasts off, I'm happy to say that Max Rowe-Brown is back. Max, how is the new house?
Hello, Jack. Yeah, it's going very well, thank you. The new house is looking well, like it needs some more decorating done to it, but it will be ready, and soon all our lovely viewers who on YouTube will be able to see a different background for me. So that's good. Look forward to that.
Good. And we are of course joined by the ever-present Ross Legg. How are you doing, Ross?
I'm okay, mate. I'm okay. Can't say I'm excited at all about the ODIs. And do you know what? It's going to be forced. It's going to be forced. I've loved the T20. I've loved the Test series. So I've got to pump myself up again for another England loss.
Of course. Before we get on with the rest of the show, boys, we've got time for, one of our irreverent questions. This week, with a view to the start of the cricket season, which for us is less than a month away now. 17th of April is our first game, which is stupidly early.
Nice and chilly.
It will be freezing cold. We've got less than a month to prepare for that. We are, however, all locked down in our houses, so we've got no opportunity to go to nets. We can't train. My question, fellas, and we'll start with you, Ross. How is one supposed to stay in shape, and work on your cricketing skills in this current environment?
So I think when it comes to training, it's always a good thing that you do it with somebody else. So if you've got a housemate, and maybe they're not as into cricket as we might be, but there's going to need to be some kind of give and take in that kind of scenario. So if you've got a girlfriend or you've got a housemate that you're going to go on a walk with, why don't you take a tennis ball with you or a cricket ball with you and do some catching down the park? Something that's nice and simple, but will just get your eye back in. And there's also a bit where you are, when you do go walking and you come across an Astro cricket pitch, go and do an Owen Morgan. Visualize that would be my best go. Like if you can't do it physically, you've got to do it mentally. And cricket is more mental than physical anyway. So let's bring visualization into the amateur game.
I think that's good as well, because the one-on-one nature of the walk and catch does comply with the regulations. So a good answer from you, Ross. Max, what would you do?
Well, with thanks to Ross for running over slightly into what I was going to say, which was that cricket is as much a mental game as a physical game. So I would suggest visualization and just imagining yourself hitting the winning runs. I'll also add, if you have an outside space and maybe some spare pocket money, I would buy a crazy catch and just spend half an hour throwing a tennis ball at it, because they are great fun. And get your hand-eye coordination going again. It certainly helps.
That's a pretty good answer, assuming you've got that outside space. What I would suggest. So one of the things when it comes to practice, what helps is if you can replicate a game situation. So with that in mind, what I would do to replicate the pressure that you're under when you're batting in cricket is get a collection of your most valuable items. So I'm thinking family heirlooms, your TV, laptop, that kind of thing. Put it in a circle around wherever you are, and then drop and hit a ball through the gaps. And that will train you not only to find the gaps, but also to do that in a situation where getting it wrong is extremely costly.
I assume we're talking a proper hard ball here.
Oh yeah, 100%,
maximum
yeah.
damage.
Yeah, and like ideally you want to hit that ball as hard as possible as well. Yeah. It's not just about guiding, like really, put some welly into it. Groove those skills.
I also recommend buying some insurance first.
No, because then
that's classic you. That is, Max.
Yeah, you're preparing to fail with insurance, and to really get that game situation, you have to be fearless.
Again, the cricket podcast leading on the mental side of the game. I think it's a really good point, Jack, and I like the jeopardy of that training. That would work well.
Ross,
But
anyway,
there is one more thing. You know when people do shadow batting?
yes.
Yeah.
So Steve Smith, notorious for shadow batting, especially annoying everybody in his hotel rooms. When you shadow bat, do you practice snicking off, or do you actually practice hitting like a straight drive or a defensive shot?
Well, if I practiced snicking off, I would never do it. So, that would be everything I practice. It never happens, does it? It's just because I just end up snicking off. So if you end up snicking off, then it won't happen, and maybe you'll cream it through the covers.
How do you bring the shadow batting session to a close if you're not out? That's the only thing I'd ask there, because you have to. You're always not out? That'd be ridiculous.
You can always practice leaving a straight one.
You need to punctuate the shadow batting.
Every good bit of shadow batting involves practicing a leave. So just pretend that leave was straight.
Right, great. Ross, any messages for our listeners before we move on with the rest of the show?
Yep. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. We've had a great growth in the last month, and we're great for all of the comments that we receive, both pro Kohli, both pro Rohit, both calling us idiots, whatever. But we bring it on. We love all of it. And then if you're listening to us on a podcast platform, please follow and subscribe on there, whichever one you're using, and find us on social media sites, Twitter and Instagram at The Cricket Pod.
It's nice to know, isn't it, Ross, that whatever views people have, there's something that can unite them.
Yeah, I think you're completely right on that, Max. And well, we're just giving a service to people, right? That's what we're doing.
We will take a short break, and then we will come back with our series wrap up and our combined best 11. Got it! So, boys, India eventually took down the 5-match series 3-2. I think, England, they're going to be a bit disappointed, aren't they? That they were 2-1 up and they let that lead slip. They probably had a chance to win that 4th T20 when Stokes and Bairstow were going so well. But overall, I think in the 5-match series, India probably just edged it, probably just deserved to win that. Max, let's start with you. As you're back after your rest. What did you learn?
It wasn't very restful, I can assure you.
What did you learn from this series?
For me, I think the key thing is that England needs to have a look at their depth in their bowling. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of it because I've been busy with the house stuff, but I've been trying to catch up on what I can. And what seems to me to be a key issue for the England team is that Ben Stokes has bowled a lot of overs, and I don't think that's a recipe for success in T20 because it's a bit of a lottery, isn't it? I mean, he might come on and give you that really tight over and get a key wicket that you need, but all too often it ends up with him being flayed to all parts, and you've lost a key bit of momentum in a game. So I think because England have got Archer and they've got Rashid, and Mark Wood as well bowled really well. So in terms of the front line bowlers, the quality is exceptional. But then when it comes to that backup, where we saw Wood was out injured, and I think bringing Tom Curran was the wrong call from a selection point of view. And I'm sure you've been round and round about why on earth Moeen Ali was left on the bench, but I think it's just that sort of depth in the bowling that we lack.
Ross, from an India perspective, then, we've talked a lot on this podcast, haven't we, about how pre-series and in the first match, India's sort of signals and the way India seemed to be going about things was a little bit 2016. I mean, that lineup, KL Rahul, Dhawan, Kohli, Shreyas Iyer as a top 4 in the first match, wasn't great, but they did transform how they were playing, and the personnel shifted quite a lot. The top 4 in the final match being Rohit, Kohli, Surya Kumar Yadav, and Hardik Pandya. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and whether or not it's better for India now than it was at the beginning?
Yeah, so I think if we go all the way back to where we stuffed India in the first game, I think it was important to know that India, after that, had to show a willingness to adapt. Like before that game, Kohli came out and said, we're going to go with a positive attitude. And yet their selection completely let them down. You can't pick kind of a bunch of Toyota Corollas to drive like a Ferrari, as Dennis Kartik would ruminate. But there is a bit where they had to show a willingness to adapt. They had to show a willingness to make those tough choices, and also willingness to listen to the cricket podcast, which I think is a recipe for success of any sides that we kind of look and do a bit of a deep dive on. They realised that their strategy over the last couple of years, which has been a successful strategy, just wasn't going to work. The game has moved on. And giving opportunities to exciting young players who have come through and lit up the IPL is actually a really good kind of breeding ground for talent, surprisingly, and has proven a really good decision and shown the way for a fundamental shift in that approach, especially in the batting department. So I still think there is an opportunity to improve. You kind of mentioned Shreyas Iyer playing there. He did show in the fourth T20 that he has that ability to kind of strike out with some classical cricket shots, which is great to see. But they're still playing two anchors, and that's kind of a conservative way to play T20 cricket. You mentioned, Jack, around their success in kind of 2016 and that approach that they had. Regardless of the pressure from your fan base, you can't continue. India can't continue to select based upon their batting and bowling records from 2016 to 2018. It's just a different game. The people are playing it in such a different way that actually KL Rahul being the greatest batsman of all time in that position, regardless of what he was opening up, just isn't true anymore. So that is why those tough decisions had to be made where he was out of form.
Ross, are you surprised that India actually did drop KL Rahul for that last game? Because I think it's something that we suggested that they probably should do, and a lot of people weren't happy about that suggestion. But it fits with that what you're talking about that development of playing the more exciting players.
The India selectors said he was their best. Said that KL Rahul was their best T20 batter before they dropped him for that match.
That's like the dreaded chairman's.
There is a bit where I just think that this is for Owen Morgan. He's got the rule over who is selected in that side. I don't actually think that Kohli has the same sway. I still think the BCCI have and the selector panel have a strong kind of control over that. And I think I wasn't surprised to see KL Rahul dropped. I think he looked so out of sorts. And if Kishan came in and Sky came in and hit no runs, I genuinely think he would have still been in there, right? But the fact they came in and made such an impact and showed just exactly that kind of fearless cricket, there was no way they could be like, oh, actually, this guy who doesn't hit many boundaries and is completely out of form is the right option for us to beat England. And there's some things in sport where a good competitor or like a rival forces you to upgrade your game, and they force each other to get better and better. And I think that England and India are actually in that position in white ball cricket right now. India are way ahead in the test arena, but I think in white ball cricket, there is something there between those two teams. As I do think their approaches, especially and the talent they have available, is just a little bit more than some of the other nations. India's bowling strategy throughout this, and Jack, I think we've kind of talked about it a couple of times. We've actually been quite impressed with how they've gone about what they've done. What have you seen, Jack, in terms of the bowling bits that actually have impressed you?
I think it's the individuals that have been impressive rather than necessarily the whole strategy. So India, in some of the matches, I think 3 of the 5 went in with a 5 bowler lineup, which gives you
quite risky.
Yeah, there's no fail safe there. There's no you can't really mix it up too much. And none of the Indian batters really bowl. I mean, Kohli used to a little bit. Rohit Sharma did actually turn his arm over in tests, but I don't think either of them are going to be delivering too many overs in for the rest of their careers. And that meant that Hardik Pandya and Shardul Thakur had to really step up in the matches where they were the 4th and 5th bowler. And I think they were the difference probably between the two sides. The fact that Hardik was able to exploit the pitch really well in, what was it, the 3rd T20, where he bowled a lot of cutters. And the fact that Shardul Thakur in some high leverage moments, some moments which really would have changed or really changed the game either way, was able to deliver and execute the plan that he had. So I'm thinking here specifically the fourth T20, where Stokes and Bairstow were going really well. And he bowled that over. He picked up, I think he got Morgan and Stokes back to back. Yeah. And he basically did that by executing this sort of wide of off stump right on the wide line plan, and got both of them to hole out. So I think that's in my mind, they were the difference makers, really. It was that fourth and fifth bowler for India that consistently outperformed the fourth and fifth bowler, or the fourth and fifth bowler combination for England.
Yeah. You can kind of directly equate those, can't you? You've got Hardik Pandya and Stokes, I suppose, you would say would be the same role.
It's
and then
something like that. It's Stokes, Stokes and Curran mixed together is, and possibly Jordan and Thakur would be the other one. I think that's probably where the difference was. I mean, you have to remember as well, Ross, the arms race thing. We were talking about this on a podcast we did earlier with Crick Vidya. India are probably, after this series, just slightly edging ahead of England. They've got Bumrah and Jadeja to come back as well. That gap is going to creep up slightly. So it will be really interesting in the reverse fixtures back in England over the summer, what England do to maybe reshuffle their deck and maybe look to develop some alternative strategies for the type of bowling that they struggled with, which was that kind of into the pitch, mainly slow deliveries from quick bowlers. We've got plenty of time in the future probably to talk about that, I think, and I think we'll get round to it. So should we run through the best 11 or our combined best 11?
Yeah, I think just before going on, I think, as you said, Jack, we're talking about them edging ahead. India have the players, and they are edging towards the right strategy and right approach to be an extremely scary proposition for anyone coming up against them. And I think that the IPL should play a huge factor in who ends up being part of that squad. The fact that only 2 or 3 people have debuted for India in the T20 side in the last kind of couple of years speaks volumes around that apprehension to make change. But Sky and Kishan have shown the way there. So it's a really exciting time to be an India fan in the T20 world.
I think it's really promising that they've actually finally picked those two, and it's been a long time coming, but it's good to see. So like you say, post IPL is going to be exciting times.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So best 11. Max, we'll start with you, even though you didn't watch that much. Who will open the batting in the Max Rowe Brown combined 11?
So I've got Rohit nailed down, and then the other opening batsman I'm still trying to decide between Roy and Buttler. I think I'm leaning towards Buttler.
Max, not Max, Ross, you're the other one.
Yeah, I've got Rohit leading as captain, batting number 1, and Buttler batting at number 2.
Yeah, so I also have Rohit as captain. Yeah,
that's he look on the times he was captaining the India side, they were effective. He pulled back that fourth.
Yeah, if they do bring in time limits, it might become a bit of an issue. But
right. Rohit and Buttler. So that's a combined 3 there. Roy might have been a little bit unlucky to miss out. But
yeah, I mean, before this series, I'd have had Buttler 100%. After this series, Roy's looked like he's back to some sort of near where we've seen him before. So he's certainly in the running.
Scoring the most beautiful set of ugly runs. Jason Roy.
Oh, that 40-odd, was it the second game? That was ugly as anything, wasn't it? That was hideous. Hit all the branches on the ugly tree on the way down.
So reverse order then. At number 3, I'll go first. I've got Virat Kohli, who was the series top run scorer, scored the runs at a reasonable rate. We complain about Kohli, and we're justified in complaining about Kohli because he isn't a batter who fails safe. He can eat up balls, and that can put his team in difficulty. Did for RCB at the IPL, but in this series he has been excellent. There's no real way of getting around that. When what he does comes off,
which is more often than not, to be fair to him.
It isn't, but statistically it just isn't. But when it does, he is one of the best strikers at the death, and we saw that 3 times in this series. and he scored over 200 runs in 5 matches, which is good going. Ross, are you going to argue with Kohli at number 3?
So I'm actually a big fan of having a floating batting lineup. So I think if you get off to a flyer, actually someone like Sky or Ishan Kishan, you should be like, there should be something there. If you lose a wicket early on, Kohli is your guy to go in. But actually, Kohli might not well bat in my T20. He's still in the side, but there should be hitter after hitter, I think, if you get off to a rocket with Rohit and Butler. But Kohli's in at 3 at the moment for me.
Max?
Yep, unanimous, Kohli. And I also am a fan of a floating lineup. I wouldn't actually have anyone below the openers in a fixed position.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apart from once you get to the bowlers, obviously, I'm not going to put Archer in at 3. That's
cricket hipsters, the pair of you.
No, we're modernists, mate. Modernists.
By the way, in the comments, let us know your combined 11. I'm sure you'll disagree with some of these, and we are interested. Number 4, Ross, you get to go first on this one.
So I think actually Sky did enough for me. Out of performances based here, he was just brilliant. A breath of fresh air to both sides, I think, and showed the way. So the new boy gets a shout for me at 4.
Max?
I've gone for Ishan Kishan at 4, and I think that's sort of based on the future prospects of youth and IPL performance from last year, as much as what we've seen in this series. Obviously, Sky did play really well on his opportunities.
Okay, that's interesting that you've included a different selection criteria. So I've been quite narrow on this series, but
Yeah.
I think that will undermine at least one of my other picks. I've gone Sky, so Sky gets the deciding vote at 4. Suryakumar Yadav. I think had Ishan Kishan played more matches, he may well have been in my final 11, but he only played 2, and was excellent in one, and all right in the other. Which brings us on to number 5. And Max, it's your turn to go first again.
And this is where it gets really difficult.
Yeah, I really.
This is the
5, 6, 7 region of this team is difficult.
I really struggle with this, and I'm not sure whether it's inspired or a complete mess. So, I mean, you can be the judge, but I've gone for Johnny Bairstow.
Okay.
Bairstow. Talk us through that thinking.
So I've crossed out several things. I wrote Morgan out and then crossed that out immediately. Then I've had Stokes in there for some reason and crossed that out because I realised that we've got too many left-handers in, so we've got to have some right-handed action in there to balance it out. We're thinking about all the eventualities here. And then I thought we could have gone with Ishan Kishan and Sky, but I think Bairstow again. I've sort of gone for a slightly more of the historic, well proven. You need a bit of experience in your side to balance out the exuberance of youth. So it's not just this series pick.
Well,
from the players in this series,
I'll present this series pick then because I think that's probably Shreyas Iyer. I think he batted really well twice for India. Firstly, in the first game where he salvaged them a little bit. I mean, you can argue that they were junk runs and that getting India up to 130 or whatever it was didn't really make much difference. I mean, what's the difference between 130 and 100 in a sense? I think England would get either pretty comfortably. And he might have been better off shooting for the moon and trying to get to 160. But, it was a good innings. Possibly saved his place in the side. What I was most impressed by, though, was his performance in the 4th T20 when he came in after Suryakumar Yadav was given out after that kind of juggled catch from Milan and just teed off, scored 37, I think, a strike rate of over 200, really pushed India on over 180, and that set up the win. So, historically broke out of that historic stereotype there. So, and Ross, I mean, I guess this means you get the deciding vote unless you're going to introduce a wild card option.
So I think that this is the point where I think England fans would be screaming that Stokes has to be in it. Stokes has to be in it. But actually, Stokes doesn't even make my 11.
Stokes isn't in my team either.
And
spoiler alert.
If it was based upon kind of the thinking ability around it, I think I quite liked Pandya up the order. So I really enjoyed the fact that he was there. But I see where you guys are coming from, and the fact that I actually do think he hit junk runs. I think the 60 odd that he got in that anchor innings was
Not in the fourth T20.
No, not in the fourth T20. I think that was a good innings, right? But at the same time, you're also basing him. He was what, fourth top run scorer, maybe fifth top run scorer in that, because of that 60 that he got. And I just didn't value it as much as the contributions to some other people. So I'm going to side with Johnny Pearstow with Maxwell Brown on that.
Oh, that's definitely, people are definitely going to go, not going to be unhappy with that. I think Shreyas Iyer is pretty hard done by there. Maybe what this does show, though, just as a point linking back to the rest of the series, is that neither team's middle order really did that much in this series.
The old engine room.
Yeah. It was very much like a top order battle. I think
there is an argument to be said, because Pant, I thought, actually played reasonably. He hit a few 30s kind of along the way, and it was pretty unglamorous, but it was still a useful player to have in that bit.
There was a 26 or 13 balls in there as well, wasn't there? And that's exactly the kind of thing you want at that stage of the innings.
There was also a 21 off 23.
Yes,
stinking the place out a little bit. Isn't it?
But I can't in the right mind sit and say that Iyer should be the one dropped out of that India team and then put him in the combined 11 for the series. So
okay, that's fair enough. It's good reasoning. Which brings us to number 6. Who are you going with at number 6, Ross?
Hardik Pandya is in there for me. I think he's a good option with the ball. I think he can get better, but I think he proved his adept attitude on here, and he seemed to be in the leadership team of India as well when he was on the field. And I think I quite enjoyed that bit, and how much kind of the passion that you see from him, as well as his boundary hitting percentage, which I think is very, very useful to a combined 11 side that will take on the rest of the world.
I would agree with that. I've got Hardik at number 6. Of the people in the middle order who largely failed, so all the sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 kind of area on both sides that was a bit underwhelming and didn't really win a game for either team. Hardik was the one player who sort of did have a good innings with the bat. Thinking here in the 5th T20, and his bowling, I think his economy was below 7 for the series, which is phenomenal for an in quotes 5th bowler. I thought it was a no-brainer there. Max?
Yeah, that's all 3 for Hardik. Again, you got the bowling option and just so much power at that as a finisher. He's perfect for that team, I think.
Right.
This imaginary brilliant team that will definitely win the World Cup.
Number 7. I've gone Shardul Thakur because I think his bowling was good. I don't know if we really saw him bat, did we? I mean, he did hit maybe a couple of sixes in one of the games. But his bowling was good. Crucial wickets at crucial times. Max, number 7.
So my pick for number 7 has benefited from the much talked about absentee bias and how good you are when you're not around. And for that reason, it's Moeen Ali.
I like your style,
That's
Max.
very clever. That is very clever. Ross?
So I think 7's actually really difficult, right? Because if you look at the combined 11 that we're starting with, down to 6, we've already got Pandya kind of there. Like, we're going in here with if we have a classic England collapse, then we're in trouble in this team, and I'm not sure that Thakur is going to be Thakur, Archer, whoever is below him. I'm not sure is making up, but if we're going to go with that approach, I'm going to have to back you and say that Thakur was actually impressive. Like, he was a backup going into this, and I think he's actually proved that he's a pretty handy middle overs bowling, kind of that Liam Plunkett kind of role. And you have seen him hit a couple of boundaries. I still so want to say Moeen Ali with Max though, because he does just seem like the guy who's there to carry the bags, and he's just but he performed well, so credit where credit's due.
Number 8, and then I think we'll do probably the last 3. We'll just say who they are because it doesn't really matter where they bat. Number 8, I've gone Jofra Archer. Would anyone like to argue with that?
No.
Ross?
No, he's in there for me.
He had a pretty good series with the ball. Not his best, but all right. And hit some sixes in one game.
Nearly completed the daylight rob. Well, it was night time, but burglary of the century.
Right. And your final 3 bowlers, Max, you can start.
Okay, so I am going Rashid, Bhuvi, and Mark Wood. But I suppose Mark Wood would bat at at 10 or well, not even 10, probably 9 in that. But with the proviso that obviously Bumrah would be Mark Wood when he's back.
And Ross?
I've gone with Chahar, Adil Rashid, and Boovi. I was actually really, really impressed with Chahar the way he came in. Like, I think when Chahar was dropped because he was pretty disappointing, I thought Chahar showed that he's got a bit about him, and I thought that his 8-ball over when he was bowling wide to Josh Buttler was actually critical to India winning yesterday. So yeah, that's why he's in my side, and I think Adil Rashid proved again that he's actually a pretty handy bowler, even if he doesn't probably deserve an IPL contract.
So I've gone with Max here. I've gone Boovi, Wood, and Adil Rashid. Basically, because I think Wood probably won at least one match for England, more or less by himself. Maybe not by himself, but really like caused big problems in a couple of games. In a couple of others, pretty easy to hit. So there's a bit of a trade off there. But I like a match winner, so I've gone Wood. That gives us a complete 11. Sorry, Ross, you've been outvoted.
I'm okay with that. I'm just looking at that 11, and I'm just like, I'm not sure that 11 would win on paper.
It depends who they're playing,
11.
doesn't it?
It's a series 11, isn't it? Like it's completely arbitrary. And as you say, Jadeja comes back into that side. Bumrah comes back into that side. Morgan is a better number 5 than like Bairstow. Well, maybe not. But there's arguments for Morgan on song. There's arguments for Roy on song. There's lots of arguments you can have about this. Let us know in the comments. We've gone with Rohit Sharma, Josh Buttler, Virat Kohli, Surya Kumar Yadav, Johnny Bairstow, Hardik Pandya, Thakur, Shardul Thakur, Jofra Archer, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, Mark Wood, and Adil Rashid. I think it's an all right time. It's an all right team.
Yeah.
It's all right. Maybe not best ever, but it's an all right team. Let's take a quick break, and we shall come back with a little preview of the ODIs.
So that concludes the T20 series. We've had the entrees of the tests, a 5-match test series, the fish course that was the 5-match T20 series, and now we're into the real meat and drink of the main course, the one that everyone's been waiting for. It's the 3-series ODI to bookend the England's tour of India in all 3 matches in Pune. And I mean, I assume you two are as excited for this as I am. This is really it's quite key, isn't it, in the terms of the cricket calendar, with an ODI World Cup in several years, and I can't wait.
What a waste of everybody's time. Like 3 more T20s would be far more entertaining than 3 ODIs. I'm just not sure what anyone is getting out of this. Who is proving themselves to do anything in this 3-match series?
Yeah, it feels like a bit of a contractual obligation, doesn't it? But I mean, they are there. It is a form of cricket that will be played. There's not 5 matches, so obviously I think there's some sort of understanding that it might not be as key as the tests in the T20s, but
there was only 4 tests though, so
true. But it's fewer than the others. But yeah, it's happening. So why don't we have a look at what we can expect and see who we think is going to win? It's a chance for England to salvage a little bit of pride, I suppose, having lost both of the 2 series. The tests, obviously, we're not surprised, but we all thought England might be able to. Well, 2 of us thought England might squeak a win in the T20s, and Jack thought they would romp home. But never mind. He's gone Michael Vaughan on that one.
I'm absolutely stunned. I'm absolutely stunned that England didn't win away in India.
Yeah. So the ODIs
I will never
here.
make a crazy prediction ever again.
The ODIs are here, and England have got a chance to at least leave India with the series win. Obviously, the world champions, so they'll be looking to maintain their dominance over the rest of the world. What can we expect to see, Jack and Ross, from firstly from the 2 squads? Obviously, there's some big news from the England team.
Well, let's do England first then, because sort of as you kind of hint at there, Max, it's actually sort of more interesting to talk about who isn't there from an English perspective than who is. So let's do them first. There will be no Joe Root, there will be no Chris Wokes, and most notably, there will be no Jofra Archer. Now, Root, he obviously captains the test team with the T20s in between. There was no point in him flying all over the world to come back for these. As Ross sort of said, they are the most important matches in the world. I think they may be a bit more important than completely pointless. but you're not gonna. There's like Joe Root's. Let him have a nice long holiday before he gets going again in the county season. Wokes, I mean, can either of you explain what's been going on with Chris Wokes?
I haven't got a clue. There's not been much rotation with Chris Wokes, has there?
No, he's been on the whole tour basically. Hasn't played a single game. We finally got to the bit where you'd think, oh, Chris Wokes will play, and England have sent him, and he's been scheduled to rotate at that point. So, we've talked about the rotation thing. We think it's probably a good idea. Some of the scheduling of that rotation has been ludicrous.
Questionable.
Yeah, this is probably
Moeen Ali as
example of
well.
that.
He didn't play a single T20 game, but we wanted him to play the last 2 tests, but he was scheduled to go for a rest. It's crazy.
Yeah, and then there's the big boy, Jofra Archer, and this is pretty big news, and quite possibly, well, it is. It's the scariest news that you could have heard probably if you're a fan of Archer. Basically, he has gone home because of his recurring elbow injury. And I think the way England have been talking about that suggests that this is like a serious concern for Archer and England's plans over the next year as a whole. So Morgan, after the game yesterday, he said this. He clearly has a progressive injury, which has become worse and does need attention. We are going to wait until tonight and tomorrow to see how Jofra has pulled up. It will be over to our medical team to make a decision, and hopefully the decision Jofra comes to will be the best for us in the long term. So we know now, that day later, that things did not get better overnight, and Jofra, in conjunction with the medical team, has decided to go home. The ECB released a statement saying Jofra's elbow has deteriorated over the course of the 2020 International Series and made it increasingly challenging for him to maintain performance levels. Chris Silverwood, he chimed in as well. It's obviously disappointing for Jofra and for us. He will have every resource we can give him so that we can get to the bottom of what is going on. The important thing here is we get it cleared up, see the specialist, and make sure we put everything in place for Jofra to have a long, successful international career for England in all formats. Now, reading between the lines a little bit here, it sounds like they don't really know what the problem is, and it sounds like it could be pretty serious. If they're talking about Jofra Archer's long-term ambitions in different formats of the game, and indeed sort of his international career in general, from Chris Silverwood, I think there might be a big problem there, don't you think, Max?
Yeah, well, I think if they don't know what it is, that's the concern, isn't it? I mean, if you've got pain but you know what it is and it's manageable, then that's one thing. But when you don't know what it is, there's always the problem that it could be something chronic or something debilitating. We've seen players like Tymor Mills, who looked really promising, burst onto the scene and then was basically unable to bowl more than 4 overs because of his back and never really managed to push into playing for England. I'm not suggesting for a minute it could be as bad as that, but that's the kind of thing that you worry about, isn't it, when you don't know what the problem is. But fingers crossed they'll just find that there's some sort of weird muscle thing, bit of physio, and we'll be back good as new.
Indeed. It means he's not going to be playing in the ODIs. The big news, or the bigger news, possibly for our Indian listeners, is that top sources are saying that he's likely to opt out of the entire IPL following this 3-match ODI series. So, at least in the short term, it's unlikely we'll be seeing Jofra Archer. As Max says, hopefully this resolves itself. I wondered, obviously I know nothing about this, but it sounded like that's at some points like it's sort of a tennis elbow type injury.
Yeah.
And I understand that sort of a long period of rest can help if it is. either way, let's sort of hope for the best on that one.
Yeah, I think we can confirm that Rajasthan Royals will be finishing 8th in the IPL this year.
It's a big loss for them. It's a big loss for England as well. I mean, England's whole bowling strategy for the T20 World Cup and into the Ashes is to hope that Jofra Archer does the business. It's the Rajasthan Royals approach to cricket. It's like we've got one really good guy, and let's talk about who is there then. England will be fielding 9 of the 14 guys who were in the 2019 World Cup squad. That does mean we'll be seeing Bairstow and Roy opening the batting. We'll get to see Stokes, Morgan and Butler in the middle order. And I imagine we'll see a fair amount of Mark Wood, Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali probably will actually play, don't you think, Ross?
I bloody hope so. What an absolute cluster. Oh, I can't swear on this. What a complete and utter disaster England's rotation policy has been for Moeen Ali. The guy is, like, the stats wise, you might not like Moeen Ali, but as a T20 player, a limited over player, he is a good asset to have. I think England went with a different strategy in the T20 in the 50 over World Cup, but there is a bit where we need some other spinners. That England can't just continue to assume that Adil Rashid's going to be absolutely fine when he's nursing a shoulder injury, right? That's the reason he's not playing Test cricket, is because his shoulder isn't up to doing it. So there needs to be another plan. Matt Parkinson has been drafted into the side.
We're going to finally see Matt Parkinson.
I mean, what does he look like? Who knows? Does anybody know what Matt Parkinson looks like? But I think it's an interesting series, this, for England, because one, yes, it's the bookend of a very long tour, which they've kind of taken a bit of a hit on in the Test matches and did okay in the T20 series. Will there still be the fight and still be the hunger to win these games, or should it be the opportunity for the likes of Liam Livingstone, Reece Topley, Sam Billings to actually have a proper opportunity?
Well, we've got those. There's the Curran brothers as well. Are you excited, Max, to see any of those 5 or 6 players?
I would really like to see Matt Parkinson play, because I mean his domestic record's pretty good, and he's like Ross said, Adil Rashid's shoulder isn't particularly secure. I don't know whether that's the right word, but
his arm's going to come off.
It's a bit floppy. Yeah, dislocate at any moment. But I'd Reece Topley actually. He's struggled with injury a lot, but he's got himself back into fitness. I think he moved to Surrey and has got a bit of form going. So
bit of Maxwell Brown funding behind him as well.
Yeah, but I mean, people talk often, don't they, about the left arm option and having that angle. So I think I'd be quite interested to see him get a go and see how he does, because I mean, Sam Curran's played quite a lot of cricket. We know all about Sam Curran, so he doesn't necessarily need to play every game. And Liam Livingstone as well, another man who's always on the fringes but doesn't seem to play a huge amount, and has quite a good does quite well in the Big Bash. That doesn't necessarily translate that well to ODI cricket, but certainly always up for seeing some new talent in the England team, especially when it doesn't really matter.
Well, that is the thing, isn't it, for England? Because we don't know that much about a lot of these players. As people who follow English cricket, we do a podcast on cricket. The reality is that because of the way cricket is broadcast in this country, we don't get to see an awful lot of the domestic scene. I mean, Max, you've got a season ticket at Surrey, so you've seen one of the teams a lot, and you probably get a little bit of rotation of some of the others as well.
Yeah.
But there's not an awful lot. I mean, they don't broadcast all of the 50 overs or all of the 50 over cup, or they
don't even broadcast all of the Blast.
Exactly. So unlike for India, so when Surya Kumar Yadav and Ishan Kishan came in for India, we've seen 20 innings of both of those. We know all about them, even as fans of England, I suppose. There's nothing. There's interesting stuff. You want to see how the step up. But it's not as much of an unknown as it is with England players. And I think probably the step up, as Ross, you were saying earlier in the show, the step up between the IPL and international cricket is a lot smaller, if not about the same, as it is from county cricket to international cricket, which is a big difference. So, I think for England, if you're an England fan here, you've got to want to see some of these other guys playing, because we do need some answers. We need some answers about whether these guys can cut the mustard. And I think England have got to learn a lot to learn. I also think that this series probably marks, in a sense, the beginning of the next 50 over cycle from an English perspective. So I think up until now, the matches after the 2019 World Cup have been virtually meaningless. But the 2023 World Cup is in India. We've got 2 T20 World Cups in between, after which I would expect to see some retirements or some poor performance, or people maybe reorienting their careers to focus on the test game, and some white ball spots opening up. So the fringe guys at the moment, they will need to compete, or that they will need to start showing what they can do in series like this to break into that squad as it starts to settle again in maybe a year or 2 years' time in the run up to that India series. So, this is the starting gun. There's quite a lot to look at. As sort of you've both said, I do wonder whether England will be a little bit tired at the end of a pretty long and punishing touring schedule that started way back in January in Sri Lanka. So I'm not too optimistic from an English perspective. But
it's pretty baffling that Ben Stokes is playing, if I'm perfectly honest.
Well, you say that he hasn't played since the 2019 World Cup, and I think this is, in terms of starting guns going, I think Stokes coming back into the side, I mean, possibly even with a view to being the captain when that World Cup comes round, is interesting. Anyway, I've talked about England for flipping ages there. Ross, India.
Yeah, so India started off the T20 series with their ODI side, right? So we know all about it. So the additions into this has been Shubman Gill, who had a good series in Australia, struggled, I think it's fair to say, in the Test matches against England. And Jack, you talked about there being kind of that new starting gun for England. I'm not entirely convinced that's how India are treating this. They've got Natarajan in the side. Siraj is also there, but they're almost kind of known quantities, I think, a little bit now. They're kind of part of that squad. We expect to see them in that side, which is a good thing. But they've still drafted back in Kuldeep Yadav, who we've seen plenty of in the kind of World Cup. KL Rahul might well be given some more opportunities to find that bit of form, and ODI cricket might well be the platform for him to do that, and he could have the opportunity to impress. I think they've got that top order, kind of Kohli's in there, Rohit Sharma, Shikhar Dhawan, KL Rahul, Gill, Shreyas Iyer's in there as well, Sky. So there's still so much talent within this ODI side, and I think that they are probably taking this very, very seriously. I think the opportunity to beat England across all formats is probably is great for any country to do it, especially India over England, to kind of be just like, we are pretty good, aren't we? We are pretty good. But I think there's a couple of people who I'm really excited to see. And Sky, if he can translate his skills into ODI cricket, will be interesting to see. I think Chahal is, again, he's a bowler who impressed in the IPL, but England kind of got used to him, and he didn't have that much of an impact when it came to the T20 games. So it'd be interesting to see him. But other than that, you've got Prashid Krishna, who's come in. I think I've said that correctly. If I haven't said that correctly, I'm going to apologise now rather than taking a load of stick in the YouTube comments. But he's a pace bowler who's impressed within the Vijay Hazare Trophy. So that is a strong side. And I still think they will. This should be the opportunity to showcase even more Indian talent, and I'm just a little bit concerned here that they've not done that. Like, is Shikhar Dhawan really going to be around for the next 2023 World Cup?
I think there's a reasonable chance. I actually think this is. I think India are playing their best side less Bumrah and Jadeja, who are obviously not being rested. They're just unavailable for two different reasons.
Shami's not there as well, who typically use.
Yeah, that is fair enough. Yeah, I think this is roughly where India will shake out for the 2023 World Cup. As you sort of say, I mean, like Dhawan, Rohit Sharma, they're not young men. So will they necessarily make it? I'm not 100%.
Rohit doesn't strike me as the kind of person who would be held back hugely by aging a little bit in the way he plays the game.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it happens differently to different people, doesn't it? Age. But I think India will want him to be there. I think they'll see him like that. If you look at, if you're managing the India side and you're looking at career trajectories, I think you're probably marking that World Cup as maybe the summit or the end of the line for players like Dhawan and players like Rohit Sharma.
And that is why someone like Shubman Gill is in that squad, right?
Yeah. He's either the replacement if things start to ebb away slightly quicker than those two would like, or he is there to kind of be the understudy to learn and then to take on the mantle moving forward. Pretty scary proposition for the rest of the world. Shubman Gill is quite good at cricket, but yeah, I'm looking at that side, and I think that is going to be a real challenge for England in this 3-match series.
There is one surprise omission for me, and I think, and I can't believe I'm going to say that, he had a torrid IPL and a torrid tour of Australia, but Prithvi Shaw has actually come out swinging in the Vijay Hazare Trophy and has hit a bunch of runs. And there is a bit where how much value do you place on certain domestic competitions? And someone like Padakal, someone like Shaw, that might have been a good opportunity to have them in and around the squad. But Jack, you might well be right saying that having Gill and Shreyas Iyer and Sky is enough. There's enough spaces. There's only a limited amount of spaces for them to actually occupy if they're going to try and learn.
Yeah. I quite like this India side. I think it is good. Max, have you got anything to add?
No, I agree with you, Jack, on the sort of makeup of the side. I think it's a good blend there, really, of some of the more experienced and the younger players. And we have seen a bit of Siraj and Sundar and Thakur and those likes, but they are still new to the team. So you can't be going in and ripping up the entire blueprint to try and squeeze in some others and see how they do. And ultimately there's a series to be won here, and there is pressure to win these games when you've got a home series and you've got England in town. You've got to beat them, and I think it's a team that's set up well to do that. I think England probably shade it on the batting, given that most of their team from that World Cup win is there, but on the bowling side, I think India would probably look the stronger with the lack of the likes of Archer.
I don't know about that batting point in India.
Maybe not in India. I mean, if you take India out of it, I think on paper England would have the stronger lineup. But
possibly, but even then, like any.
You're turning into an India fan, Max, in our comments. That's what you're doing. You're going, our 2019 World Cup winning status is we're going to continue.
It's not that long ago, is it?
It isn't that long ago, but
it's not like 2016.
But I do think, I think any ODI side with Kohli in it is going to be good. Just through his presence.
What's his average? About 80.
About 400, isn't it? I mean, like, as much as we knock him for T20 cricket, and we only kind of do that as a little bit of a joke. Well, actually, I don't know if we do it as a joke.
I don't.
But if you look,
backtrack now.
Right, let's take Kohli as a player, because this is quite an interesting case study about cross-format batting. In Test cricket, he's one of the big four. He's not Steve Smith, but he's in the top four, isn't he? In T20 cricket, because of the style he plays, I don't think he'll ever be as impactful as some of the guys who can really properly hit the ball.
Really smack it.
Yeah. Or even the people who he kind of aspires to be, I guess, or the players that he could in theory be, AB de Villiers. Like, I think AB de Villiers is a much better T20 cricketer than Kohli. That doesn't mean he's rubbish. He's maybe the best of the anchors. That he might be in the top 20 T20 batters or something like that. But I don't think you can put him in that elite category. In ODI cricket, he's playing a different ball game. He's far out of sight. Like, he's the best by miles. And I think that's where, like, because it's the white ball, that's where this reputation has really been built, and why everyone's so scared of him or thinks he's so good, and rightly so. He is fantastic. But then you throw in Sharma on top of that. You throw in like Hardik Pandya. I mean, he was destroying Australia for fun. Rishabh Pant, not cool. I don't know if you'd say he's fully established himself as a white ball international player, but you've got to think it will happen soon, don't you? Shreyas Iyer carrying around a good average, There's definitely room for a couple of Kohli type batters in most ODI sides. And I think he's a really good one. And he's probably coming to the peak of his career. Morgan, Jason Roy, maybe tailing off, going the other way. You take Root out of the England side. I think that makes that batting line a bit weaker. Anyway, that's I think this India side is really good on paper. Should we make some predictions?
Sure.
Max, let's just say top run scorer, top wicket taker, and the other one, the final scoreline.
The final scoreline. I'll start with the scoreline. I think it will be 2-1 to India. I think I will go for a very bland prediction of Virat Kohli to be the top run scorer. And to counteract that, I'll try and go for a slightly less bland pick for top wicket taker. And I will go with Mohammad Siraj.
Oh, I don't even know if he'll play. That's certainly left field. Ross, same questions.
I think England they've taken a B team to this. So, and I think India are actually going to be a bit too strong. I think we'll be lucky to win one game. So I'll say 3-0 India.
Oof. Well, that puts. You want to say top run scorer, top wicket taker?
So I think. I'm not again. We're not sure who is going to play out of those. I think I've been really impressed with Bhuvi, and it'd be kind of great to see him do well. But England wise, I'll back Adil Rashid, because Adil Rashid is always the guy who bowls his full 10. He's always going to play. So it'll be Adil Rashid for me, and I still think he'll do that. And I think run wise, to keep it interesting, Johnny Bairstow.
Oh, Bairstow. Oh, it could happen. He's great against spin, isn't he? So, as he's proven for so long now.
Akshar Patel's not playing, mate. He'll be fine.
I think England are going to surprise everyone and win 3-0. Virat Kohli's going to retire in embarrassment.
And Moeen Ali's going to be top run scorer and top wicket taker.
Yeah, no. I think India will win 3-0. I think Rohit Sharma will be top run scorer, but I'm going to back Kohli to end his century streak, his drought. I think he's due one, and ODIs is he's king. He's king in that domain. And wickets, I mean, it's a complete lottery, isn't it?
Do you know what? Actually, I'm going to change mine. 2-1. It'll be 2-1. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go full 3-0. I've just re-looked at the England side. I think we'll have one game where we win.
All right,
2-1 India.
Okay, I will say if India are going to win 3-0, it's got to be an Indian to take loads of wickets, hasn't it? Hardik Pandya. Phoned that in, haven't I?
We're finishing with a flourish here, not just maybe.
Well, I said he was good. I said he was good in the T20, so let's just. I'm
surprised that given Joe Root's not there, that David Malan hasn't made it into the full England squad. The England squad's quite small as well.
I think that's because they don't think he'll make it to 2023. I did wonder that, but yeah. I'll pick a spinner, whichever Indian spinner plays the most. Washington Sundar maybe. Chahal could do it. Someone who's one of the Indian spinners will be the wicket taker. Anyway, I think that's enough cricket chat for today. We'll be back Tuesday evening, I guess, for a recap of the first ODI. Ross, let our listeners know some things, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, please like and subscribe this video if you have watched it, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter @thecricketpod, and leave us a review if you're listening on a podcast platform. As always, leave comments. Let's start that chat, and you can laugh at Jack's 3-0 in England prediction if you really want to.
All right. Thanks very much for listening. Goodbye.
You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
I think it was a disgraceful performance, and I think it should never be permitted to happen again.
That is very good.